Commander Han Wu stood on the bridge of the Terran cruiser Horizon, watching the stars stretch past the view screen. His hands rested behind his back in the calm, confident posture he had practiced for years. Today was important. Today, humanity would make contact with one of the most powerful empires in this part of the galaxy. Distance to Anchorage Point? He asked. 3 hours at current speed, sir, replied the navigation officer. Han Wu nodded. The Anchorage Point station floated in neutral space, a place where different species could meet and talk without fear. It was the perfect location for what the Terran Coalition hoped would be a peaceful first meeting. With the Vrillian Dominion dock behind him, Captain Bora reviewed the information on her datapad. She had spent months studying the Vrillians. They were reptilian creatures, tall and covered in dark green scales. Their empire had lasted for 1,000 years. They controlled hundreds of star systems and commanded vast fleets of warships. Do you think they will listen to us? Bora asked quietly. Han Wu turned to face her. We have to hope they will. We are offering trade, friendship, and mutual protection. What reason would they have to refuse? Bora's expression showed doubt. Pride. The Vrillians have dominated this region for centuries. To them, we are newcomers, children playing at being adults. Then we will show them we are worth talking to. Han Wu said firmly. The Terran diplomatic fleet consisted of 12 ships. 6 frigates, 4 destroyers, and 2 cruisers. They carried minimal weapons as required by diplomatic law. Each ship bore the blue and white colors of the Terran Coalition, freshly painted for this historic occasion. Aboard the flagship Indomitable, Admiral Tai Yang commanded the entire mission. Tai Yang was older than most officers, his hair showing streaks of gray. He had fought in the First Contact Wars decades ago, when humanity first encountered hostile alien forces near the outer colonies. Those battles had been brutal and costly. He learned then that peace was always the better option, but peace required strength to maintain. The fleet moved through the Helios sector in tight formation. Navigation kept them on the safest routes, avoiding asteroid fields and radiation zones. The crew worked efficiently, performing their duties with quiet professionalism. Everyone knew what was at stake. This mission could determine humanity's place in galactic politics for generations to come. Lieutenant G1 sat at the communications station, monitoring all frequencies. She was young but highly skilled. Her job was to catch any signals, any transmissions that might give them information about what awaited them at Anchorage Point. Sir, I'm picking up multiple contacts, G1 suddenly announced. Her voice carried an edge of concern. Very large readings, distance approximately 200,000 kilometers. Han Wu moved to the tactical display. The screen lit up with hundreds of contacts. His stomach tightened. Identify them. Working on it, sir. Ji-Won's fingers flew across her console. Sir, they are Vrillian warships. 300 signatures. They appear to be conducting military exercises near the station. 300 ships. The number hung in the air like a weight. The entire Terran diplomatic fleet could fit into one corner of that armada. Send a message to Admiral Tai Yang, Hyanwu ordered. Inform him of the situation. Minutes later, a response came back from the flagship. Admiral Tai Yang wanted all ships to maintain course and speed. They would proceed as planned. Running away would show weakness. Humanity had nothing to hide and nothing to fear. As the Terran fleet drew closer, the Vrillian ships became visible on the long-range cameras. They were enormous. Each Vrillian battleship was 3 times the size of the largest Terran cruiser. Their hulls were dark red and black, covered in weapon ports and shield generators. They moved through space like predators, powerful and confident. Incoming transmission. G1 reported. It is from the Vrillian fleet. Audio only. Put it through, Hyanwu said. The bridge speakers crackled to life. A deep, rasping voice filled the room. It spoke in Galactic Standard, the common language used by most spacefaring species. Attention, Terran vessels. This is High Marshal Vexstar of the Vrillian Dominion War Fleet. State your purpose in this sector. Admiral Tai Yang responded from the flagship. His voice was calm and diplomatic. High Marshal, I am Admiral Tai Yang of the Terran Coalition. We come on a peaceful diplomatic mission. We request permission to dock at Anchorage Point to establish formal relations with your government. There was a pause. Then, laughter. It was not a polite chuckle or a friendly laugh. It was loud, mocking laughter that echoed through the speakers. Other voices joined in, dozens of Vrillian officers laughing at the Terran request. Diplomatic mission? Vexstar's voice dripped with contempt. With 12 ships? 12. More laughter. What are you? A school field trip? Did you bring your lunch boxes? The bridge crew of the Horizon exchanged uncomfortable glances. Bora's jaw tightened. Hyanwu felt anger rising in his chest, but forced it down. He remained calm. We came in peace. Tai Yang continued patiently. Our small fleet is a gesture of goodwill. We wish to demonstrate that we seek friendship, not conflict. Friendship? Vexstar's laughter finally stopped. His voice turned cold. You juvenile species thinks it can demand friendship from the Vrillian Dominion? You come to us with toy boats and expect us to take you seriously. High Marshal, we simply request. Request denied. Vexstar shouted. Return to your little corner of space before we swat you aside like the insects you are. The Vrillian Dominion does not negotiate with species that cannot even afford a proper fleet. The transmission shifted to all frequencies, broadcasting across the entire sector. Every nearby ship, every listening station, every species monitoring the area would hear what came next. Let this be a lesson to all who think they can approach the Dominion with weakness. Vexstar announced. We are the masters of this region. We have been here for 1,000 years and will be here for 1,000 more. The humans are nothing. Their diplomatic fleet is an embarrassment. Return home, humans, before we crush your toys. The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. G-1 spoke softly. Sir, I am detecting movement in the Vrillian fleet. Multiple ships are changing course. They are heading toward us. Double quotes. Hyanwu watched the tactical display. 30 Vrillian dreadnoughts broke formation and began moving toward the Terran ships. They were not approaching to escort them. This was intimidation. The massive warships circled the Terran fleet like sharks around prey. They performed aggressive maneuvers, coming dangerously close to the smaller human vessels. Weapon systems powered up, not to fire, but to send a message. We could destroy you anytime we choose. Sir, several ships just fired warning shots. The tactical officer reported. No hits, but they came within 50 meters of the Indomitable. Are they insane? Bora hissed. That could have been seen as an act of war. That is exactly what they want, Hyanwu said grimly. They want us to fire back so they have an excuse to destroy us on the flagship. Admiral Tai Yang made one last attempt. High Marshal Vexstar, we came here seeking peace. If you will not grant us passage to Anchorage Point, we will withdraw. But know that the Terran Coalition extends its hand in friendship. Then take your hand and leave. Vexstar replied mockingly. And do not return unless you can bring a real fleet. The communication ended with another round of Vrillian laughter. Tai Yang gave the order. All ships would begin a slow withdrawal from the sector. They would maintain formation and retreat with dignity, not in panic. As the Terran fleet began to turn away, G1 reported one final transmission. She played it for Hyanwu. It was internal Vrillian communications that they had intercepted and decoded. Vrillian officers were placing bets on how fast the humans would run. They joked about the small fleet and called humanity the newest cowards in the galaxy. Young officers competed to come up with the best insults. Bora listened to the recording. Her face hard as stone. They have made their choice. They see us as prey, not equals. Hyanwu nodded slowly. Then they are about to learn a very painful lesson about underestimating humanity. The Terran fleet moved away from the Vrillian Armada at a slow, steady pace. Every ship maintained perfect formation. No panic, no rushed movements. Just calm, professional withdrawal. But inside each vessel, the crews felt anger burning in their chests on the bridge of the horizon. Hyanwu watched the Vrillian ships grow smaller on the display. Part of him wanted to turn around and fight. Part of him wanted to show these arrogant reptiles what humanity could do. But orders were orders. Admiral Tai Yang had commanded a retreat, and they would obey. How far are the Vrillian ships following us? Hyanwu asked. About 50,000 kilometers behind us, sir, the tactical officer replied. They are maintaining that distance. I think they just want to make sure we actually leave. Bora stood beside Hyanwu, her arms crossed. They will celebrate this as a great victory. High Marshal Vexstar will tell his superiors that he scared away the humans without firing a shot. Let him celebrate, Hyanwu said quietly. Celebrations do not last forever. On board the Indomitable, Admiral Tai Yang sat alone in his private quarters. The lights were dim. He had dismissed his staff and requested privacy. Now he reviewed the footage of the encounter, watching it play again and again on his personal terminal. He saw Vextaris mocking words displayed in text on the screen. He heard the laughter of the Vrillian officers. He watched his own small fleet being circled by those massive warships. Like wolves surrounding rabbits, Tai Yang had lived a long life. He had seen war and peace. He had watched friends die and colonies burn. He had learned that sometimes the only way to secure lasting peace was through overwhelming demonstration of strength, not aggression, but capability. Show an enemy what you can do, and they will think twice before attacking. The Terran Coalition had spent decades building its military in secret. After the first contact wars, humanity's leaders decided they would never be caught unprepared again. Every colony contributed. Every world built ships. Mars constructed shipyards that churned out vessels by the dozen. The asteroid belt factories worked day and night producing weapons and ammunition. But humanity kept quiet about all of this. They did not boast. They did not threaten. They simply prepared. And when they sent diplomatic missions to new species, they sent small, peaceful fleets. Because humanity genuinely wanted peace, but humanity was also ready for war. Tai Yang opened a secure communication channel. This channel required 7 levels of authorization. Only a handful of people in the entire Terran Coalition had access to it. He entered his codes carefully, confirming his identity through retinal scan, voice print, and DNA verification. The screen changed. The words Protocol Aegis appeared in red letters. Tai Yang spoke clearly into the microphone. Authorization, Tai Yang Alpha 77. Invoking Protocol Aegis. Diplomatic mission has failed due to hostile interference. Request immediate deployment of primary fleet assets to Helios sector. He attached all footage of the encounter. Every insult, every aggressive maneuver, every mocking laugh. Then he sent the message through the quantum relay network. It would reach Earth in minutes, crossing 15 light years almost instantly on Earth. In the military headquarters buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps. Fleet Admiral Quansu received the transmission. He was a stern man with sharp eyes and gray hair cut military short. He had commanded the Terran Coalition armed forces for 12 years. In that time, he had never needed to deploy the full might of humanity's military. Today, that would change. Quansu watched the footage 3 times. His expression never changed. but inside, cold anger grew. He had known the Vrillians might be difficult. Intelligence reports suggested they were arrogant and aggressive. But to treat a diplomatic mission with such contempt was unacceptable. He summoned his senior staff to the war room. Within minutes, the best military minds in the Terran coalition gathered around the holographic star map. Commander Una arrived first. She was young but brilliant, a tactical genius who had graduated top of her class at the Naval Academy. Commodore Day 1 came next, a solid and dependable officer who commanded one of the largest battle groups in the fleet. Others followed: ship captains, intelligence officers, logistics coordinators, everyone who would be needed to execute what Quansu was about to order. Gentlemen and ladies, Quansu began. Admiral Tai Yang and his diplomatic fleet have been denied access to Anchorage Point. The Vrillian Dominion has mocked our peaceful approach and threatened our ships. They believe 12 vessels represent the full extent of our capabilities. He touched a control. The holographic display changed, showing the Helia sector and the position of both the Terran diplomatic fleet and the Vrillian Armada. High Marshal Vextar commands 300 warships and thinks that makes him invincible. Quansu continued. He has publicly humiliated humanity across all broadcasting frequencies. Every species in this sector heard him call us insects and tell us to go home. Commander Una studied the display. What are your orders, Admiral? Quansu's eyes were cold as ice. We are going to show the Vrillians what humanity is truly capable of. We are going to correct their assumptions, and we are going to do it in a way that every species in the galaxy will witness and remember. He touched another control. The display exploded with icons, thousands of them. Ship signatures spreading across the map like a swarm. We deploy everything, Quansu said. The Earth Defense Fleet, the Mars Expeditionary Force, the Colonial Guard, Jupiter Defense Wing, Saturn Patrol. Every battle group that can reach the Helios sector within 24 hours. I want overwhelming force. I want the Vrillians to look at their sensors and feel their confidence die. How many ships, sir? Day 1 asked. 4,000, Quansu replied. Give or take a few hundred depending on which vessels are closest to the jump points. The room fell silent. 4,000 warships. It was a number beyond anything most of them had imagined deploying at once. It was enough firepower to conquer a small empire, and they were about to send it all to answer an insult. Sir, Una spoke carefully. That is a massive deployment. Are we prepared for the political consequences? The political consequences are exactly why we are doing this, Quansu answered. The Vrillians need to understand who they are dealing with. More importantly, every other species watching this situation needs to see that humanity does not bluff. When we come in peace, it is genuine. But if someone spits on that peace, We respond with everything we have. He looked around the room at each officer. This is not about revenge. This is about establishing our reputation. The Vrillians saw 12 ships and assumed we were weak. They need to learn that we chose to send only 12 ships, that we always prefer diplomacy, but that we are fully capable of overwhelming force when necessary. Quansu turned back to the display. Prepare all fleets for immediate deployment. Coordinate jump coordinates with navigation. I want every ship to emerge from FTL in perfect formation. We will arrive as one fleet, unified and unstoppable, and we will show High Marshal Vextar what a real armada looks like. The officers saluted and rushed to their stations. Within an hour, orders were transmitting across the solar system and to every colony world. Shipyards put crews on alert. Weapons were loaded. Shields were tested. Captains received their assignments. The largest military deployment in human history was about to begin. Back in the Helios sector, the Terran diplomatic fleet had withdrawn to the edge of the system. They maintained position there, neither advancing nor fleeing completely. Hanwu wondered what Admiral Tai Yang was planning. "Sir," Lieutenant G1 called out suddenly, "I'm detecting unusual readings at the system edge. Quantum fluctuations. Multiple signatures." "What kind of signatures?" Hanwu asked. "Ships, sir. Ships emerging from FTL transit." Ji-Won's voice rose with excitement. "A lot of ships." Bora moved to the sensor station. She looked at the readings and her eyes widened. "That cannot be right. According to this, there are hundreds. No, thousands of contacts forming up. How many exactly?" Hanwu demanded. G-1 worked frantically at her console. "Sir, the computer is still counting. Currently at 1,500 contacts and rising. They are all broadcasting Terran Coalition identification codes." A smile slowly spread across Hanwu's face. So that is what the Admiral was waiting for at the Vrillian fleet position. High Marshal Vextar was enjoying a meal in his quarters when his second-in-command burst through the door without announcement. Sir, you must come to the bridge immediately." Vextar looked up irritated. "What is so urgent that you forget proper protocol?" "The sensors, sir. We are detecting incoming ships." "Many ships? How many?" Vextar stood, wiping his mouth with a cloth. His second-in-command's voice shook. "We do not know yet, sir. The count keeps rising. Currently over 2,000 contacts and still increasing." Vextar ran to the bridge. When he arrived, chaos greeted him. Officers shouted reports. Alarms blared. The main view screen showed space filled with emerging energy signatures. "Report." Vextar roared. The censor's officer turned to face him. The officer's scales had turned pale with fear. "Sir, 3,800 contacts and still counting. They are all human warships." "Sir, it is an entire armada." Vexstar stared at the screen in disbelief. This was impossible. The humans had only brought 12 ships. Space itself seemed to tear apart as the human armada finished its arrival. Ship after ship emerged from faster-than-light transit, appearing in perfect formation like pieces of a vast puzzle clicking into place. The sight was beyond anything the Helia sector had ever witnessed. 4,000 warships. The Earth Defense Fleet arrived first, over 800 vessels strong. Massive battleships bearing names like Everest, Sahara, and Amazon. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city. Behind them came the Mars Expeditionary Force, their ships painted in the red and bronze colors of humanity's first colony world. 600 strong and trained for aggressive combat operations, the Colonial Guard followed, representing dozens of human settlements scattered across space. Then the Jupiter Defense Wing with its heavy carriers, the Saturn Patrol with its fast attack cruisers, destroyer squadrons from the asteroid belt, frigate wings from the outer colonies. Every human military force that could reach the sector had come, and at the head of this massive armada was the Retribution. The super dreadnought was larger than any ship ever built by human hands. 5 kilometers long and bristling with weapons on every surface. Rail guns that could punch through a planet's crust. Missile batteries holding thousands of warheads. Point defense lasers that could track and destroy 100 targets simultaneously. Shield generators powerful enough to absorb a nuclear blast. On the bridge of the Retribution, Fleet Admiral Quansu stood with his hands behind his back, watching the Vrillian fleet through the forward view screen. Beside him, Commander Yune coordinated the positioning of the various battle groups. Her fingers danced across holographic controls as she organized thousands of ships into strike formations. All ships report ready for combat operations, Yuna announced. Weapons charged, shields at maximum, fighter wings launched and on standby. We are ready, Admiral. On Quansu's other side, Commodore Day 1 reviewed tactical data. His assault division alone numbered 600 warships. The Vrillians are attempting to form defensive positions, sir. It is not going well. They were spread out for exercises, not combat. We caught them completely unprepared. That was the idea, Quansu said. His voice was calm but carried the weight of absolute authority. Communications, open a channel to High Marshal Vexstar, all frequencies. I want everyone in this sector to hear what comes next. The communications officer worked quickly. Channel open, sir. Broadcasting on all bands, Quansu spoke clearly and precisely. High Marshal Vexstar, I am Fleet Admiral Quansu of the Terran Coalition Armed Forces. You encountered our diplomatic mission commanded by Admiral Taiyang. You were given an opportunity for peace, for friendship, for mutual cooperation. You chose mockery instead. You chose intimidation. You chose to treat our peaceful approach with contempt. He paused, letting his words sink in across every listening station in the sector. You told us to return home unless we could bring a real fleet. You called our ships toys. You laughed at our diplomatic efforts. You asked us to show you our strength. Quantsu's expression hardened. Request granted. On the Vrillian flagship, Vexstar watched the sea of human warships surrounding his fleet. His 300 vessels suddenly seemed pathetically small. His powerful dreadnoughts that had dominated this sector for decades now looked like children's toys. Compared to the massive human battleships, what are your orders, sir? His tactical officer asked nervously. Vexstaris' mind raced. 300 against 4,000. Even if Vrillian ships were individually superior, which he was no longer certain of, the numbers were overwhelming. And these humans had traveled 15 light years in less than a day. Their FTL technology was clearly more advanced than intelligence reports suggested. Can we retreat? Vexstar asked. His navigation officer checked the displays. Negative, sir. They have positioned ships at every jump point. We are surrounded. If we attempt FTL transit, we will collide with human vessels. Then we fight, Vexstar said, trying to sound confident. All ships, combat formation, power weapons, prepare to engage. The Vrillian fleet attempted to organize itself. Ships that had been spread across thousands of kilometers of space tried to pull together into defensive clusters. It was too slow and too disorganized. They were not ready. The human fleet did not give them time to prepare all battle groups. Quantsu ordered, commence attack. Execute Plan Alpha. Disable their capital ships first, then work down to smaller vessels. Minimize casualties where possible, but the safety of our crews is priority one. Yes, sir. Yuna's hands moved across her controls, transmitting attack orders now across the human Armada. 4,000 warships moved as one entity. They had trained for this. Every captain knew their role. Every crew had practiced these maneuvers 1,000 times. It was not their first battle. Humanity had fought wars before. They had learned hard lessons and built their military doctrine on those lessons. Captain Sung Min commanded a striker wing of 80 fast destroyers. His ships shot forward at maximum acceleration, targeting the left flank of the Vrillian formation. Rail guns opened fire, sending streams of hypersonic projectiles across the void. Vrillian shields flared and died. Armor cracked. Ships listed sideways as their engines were destroyed. Target their weapons and engines. Sung Min ordered his wing. Disable, do not destroy unless necessary. His destroyers wove through the Vrillian formation like sharks through a school of fish. They were faster, more maneuverable, and their weapons were devastatingly accurate. Within minutes, 20 Vrillian cruisers were dead in space, drifting helplessly with their systems offline. Commander Hiram led a carrier group that launched wave after wave of fighters. small, agile craft that swarmed the larger Vrillian ships. The fighters did not carry heavy weapons, but they overwhelmed the enemy point defense systems, while Vrillian guns tried to track the fast-moving fighters. Human capital ships moved into position and fired their main weapons, keep them busy. Harem commanded, "Don't let them focus on our big ships. Be aggressive, but stay smart. Return if your shield drops below 20%. Her pilots acknowledged and pressed their attacks. They were skilled and brave, dancing through enemy fire with precision. Captain Youngsek commanded the battleship Goliath. His ship was one of the largest in the fleet aside from the Retribution. When he fired his main railguns, the entire ship shuddered from the recoil. 3 massive projectiles crossed space at a significant fraction of light speed and slammed into a Vrillian dreadnought. The enemy shields held for precisely half a second before collapsing. The projectiles punched through the hull like paper. Secondary explosions rippled across the Vrillian ship as internal systems were destroyed. The dreadnought broke into 3 pieces and went dark. Target acquired. Youngsek's tactical officer reported. Another Vrillian dreadnought, bearing 270. Fire when ready, Youngsek ordered calmly. The Goliath fired again. Back on the Retribution, Quan Su watched the battle unfold. The tactical display showed a sea of green icons representing human ships, and red icons for Vrillian vessels. The red icons were disappearing at an alarming rate. Not destroyed, but disabled. Weapons offline. Engines dead. Communications severed. Sir, the Vrillian fleet is attempting to form a defensive sphere around their flagship, Una reported. Approximately 100 ships are still combat capable. Send in Day Won's assault division. Quan Su ordered. Break that formation. Capture the flagship if possible. Commodore Day-One received his orders and smiled grimly. His 600 warships had been held in reserve until now. All ships, with me, target the Vrillian flagship. Disable it. Admiral wants it taken intact if we can manage that. His division moved forward like an avalanche. The Vrillian defensive sphere tried to hold, but it was hopeless. Human ships simply went round, above and below the defenders. They used 3-dimensional tactics that the Vrillians used to more traditional combat. Struggled to counter-dart the Retribution itself joined the battle. Quan Su brought the massive dreadnought forward, and its very presence seemed to break the Vrillian morale. When the Retribution fired its main weapons, the energy discharge lit up space like a small sun. A Vrillian battleship simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant. That was a kill shot. Una said quietly. Their shields did not even slow it down. Unfortunate, Quan Su replied. But they fired on our medical frigates. That crosses a line. On the bridge of the Vrillian flagship, alarms screamed continuously. Damage reports flooded in faster than they could be processed. Vexstar watched his fleet being systematically destroyed. not in wild chaos, but in organized, precise strikes. The humans were not randomly shooting. They were executing a carefully planned battle strategy. Sir, starboard shields have failed, an officer shouted. Hull breaches on decks 12 through 20. Fire in the port engine room. Divert power from weapons to shields. Vexstar ordered desperately. Weapons are already offline, sir. We have no power to divert. An explosion rocked the flagship. The lights flickered and went out, replaced by emergency red lighting. Vexstar grabbed his command chair to stay upright. Damage report. Main reactor is unstable, sir. If we do not shut it down, we will explode. But if we shut it down, we lose life support. Vexstar looked around his bridge. His crew looked back at him with fear in their eyes. The battlefield was silent except for the hiss of venting atmosphere from damaged ships, and the crackle of dying electrical systems. Debris floated through space. Pieces of armor plating and disabled weapons platforms drifting in the void. Emergency beacons blinked from hundreds of locations where escape pods had launched. Fleet Admiral Quan Su stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the aftermath. Around him, his crew worked quietly, processing damage reports and coordinating rescue operations. The battle had lasted less than 40 minutes. 40 minutes to dismantle a fleet that had dominated this sector for decades. Casualty reports are coming in, Commander Yuna said, reviewing data on her tablet. Preliminary numbers show approximately 15,000 Vrillian casualties. Most were from ships that lost life support before they could evacuate. On our side, we have 237 casualties, mostly from the fighter wings. Quan Su closed his eyes briefly. 237 families would receive terrible news today. He would write personal letters to each one. It was his responsibility as their commander send medical frigates to every disabled Vrillian ship. He ordered priority to vessels showing critical life support failures. I want damage control teams on those ships within the next 30 minutes. Save who we can. Yes, sir, Yuna replied, transmitting the orders. Commodore Day One approached the Admiral. Sir, some of the captains are asking about prisoners. What should we do with Vrillian crew members who surrender? Treat them as rescued survivors, not prisoners, Quan Su said firmly. Provide medical care, food, and safe accommodations. They fought bravely even though they were overwhelmed. They deserve respect. Across the human fleet, medical ships moved forward. These vessels were clearly marked with large white crosses on their hulls. They approached the broken Vrillian warships carefully, mindful that some might still have functioning weapons. The first frigate to reach a damaged Vrillian cruiser transmitted a message. Vrillian vessel, this is the Terran medical ship Mercy. We are here to provide assistance. Please respond if you can hear this transmission. A weak signal came back. This is This is the Vrillian cruiser Talon. We have many wounded. Life support failing. Please help us. Hold position. Talon. We are docking now. Our medical teams will be aboard in 3 minutes. The Mercy attached itself to the Vrillian ship's emergency airlock. Human medical personnel in protective suits moved through the connection, carrying equipment and supplies. What they found inside shocked them. The Vrillian ship was a disaster. Bodies floated in corridors where artificial gravity had failed. Fires burned in sealed compartments. Wounded soldiers lay against walls, struggling to breathe thin air. But as the human medics entered, several Vrillian soldiers raised weapons weakly. "We will not surrender," one Vrillian warrior gasped. Blood leaked from a wound in his side. "You will not take us alive." The lead human medic, a woman named Dr. Minna, held up her hands. She carried no weapons, only medical equipment. "We are not here to take prisoners. We are here to save lives." "Your lives?" The Vrillian soldier looked confused. His weapon wavered. You are our enemy. We tried to destroy you, and now the fighting is over," Minna said gently. She moved forward slowly. "Let me look at that wound. You will bleed out if we do not treat it soon." The soldier's weapon lowered. His strength was failing. Other human medics moved past him, heading toward the wounded Vrillians lying in the corridor. They worked quickly and efficiently, sealing wounds, injecting medicine, providing oxygen. They treated the Vrillians exactly as they would treat human casualties. One young medic knelt beside a Vrillian officer whose leg had been nearly severed. "I need to amputate to save your life. Do I have your permission?" The Vrillian officer nodded weakly. "Do what you must." The medic worked quickly with a medical laser, removing the damaged limb and sealing the wound. Then he injected pain medication and called for a stretcher. "Get him to the surgical bay. He needs blood transfusion and synthetic replacement options discussed." Similar scenes played out across dozens of ships. Human medical teams risking their lives to save enemy soldiers. Damage control crews stabilizing reactor cores that could explode at any moment. Engineers restoring life support to ships that were barely holding together. On the Vrillian flagship, High Marshal Vextar was brought aboard the Retribution on a stretcher. He had injuries from when his bridge exploded. Burns covered his arms, and his breathing was labored. He expected to be thrown in a cell, interrogated, possibly executed. Instead, he was taken to the medical bay. The Retribution's chief medical officer was a man named Dr. Tai Hien. He was old and experienced, having served in the military for 30 years. When they brought Vextar in, Tai Hien examined him quickly. Severe burns, possible internal bleeding to broken ribs, the doctor announced. "Get him in a treatment pod immediately. Full scan and begin healing protocols." "Doctor," one of the nurses said quietly. "He is the enemy commander, the one who insulted our diplomatic mission." Tai-Han looked at the nurse with hard eyes. He is a patient. That is all that matters in my medical bay. Now do your job. The nurse flushed with embarrassment and quickly prepared the treatment pod. They placed Vexstar inside the advanced healing chamber. Nanomachines began repairing his damaged tissue. Medicine flowed into his bloodstream. His pain eased through the transparent cover of the pod. Vexstar could see the medical bay. It was filled with wounded soldiers, both human and Vrillian. The medical staff moved between them without distinction, treating injuries based on severity, not species. A Vrillian soldier lay on a bed next to a human pilot. They were both badly burned. A human doctor worked on the Vrillian while a Vrillian medic who had been rescued earlier helped treat the human. They worked together, sharing medical knowledge to save both patients. Vexstar's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The humans had destroyed his fleet. They had demonstrated overwhelming military power. They could have wiped out every Vrillian ship completely. They could have taken no prisoners and left no survivors. Instead, they were saving lives. Hours passed. The treatment pod continued its work on Vexstar's injuries. Through the observation window of the medical bay, he could see Fleet Admiral Quan Su enter. The human commander walked through the rows of beds, stopping to speak with wounded soldiers. Both human and Vrillian, Quan Su approached a badly injured Vrillian soldier. The soldier tried to sit up, but could not. "Sir, I am sorry, sir. I cannot salute." "Rest, soldier," Quan Su said gently. "You fought well. Be proud of that. We lost," the soldier said bitterly. "We were destroyed. You fought against overwhelming odds," Quan Su replied. "There is no shame in defeat when you give your best effort. Heal now. The war is over." The soldier looked confused. "What will happen to us?" "To our people? That will be decided by diplomats, not soldiers," Quan Su answered. "But I promise you this, humanity does not seek to conquer or enslave. We came here seeking peace. We still seek peace." He moved on to the next bed, continuing his rounds. When he reached Vexstar's treatment pod, he stopped and looked down at the Vrillian marshal. "Can he hear me?" Quan Su asked Dr. Tai-Hein, double quotes, "Yes, sir. The pod's communication system is active." Quan Su pressed a button that allowed him to speak directly to Vexstar. "Hi, Marshal. I am Fleet Admiral Quan Su. I want you to know that your crew is being cared for. Those who survived are being treated with respect. When you have recovered, we will talk." Vexstar's voice came through the pod's speakers. "Weak but clear. Why show us this mercy? We did not deserve it. I did not deserve it." Quan Su was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because we remember when humanity needed mercy. Centuries ago, we fought wars among ourselves. Terrible wars that nearly destroyed our entire species. We learned that vengeance creates only more vengeance. Cruelty breeds more cruelty. The only way to break that cycle is through mercy. But we insulted you, Vexstar said. We mocked your diplomatic mission. We threatened your ships. Yes, you did, Quansu agreed. And we responded by showing you our military might. We demonstrated that we are not weak. But strength without wisdom is just tyranny. And we refuse to become tyrants. He turned to leave, then paused. Rest and heal, High Marshal. When you are recovered, I hope we can have a different conversation than the one you had with Admiral Taiyang. A better conversation. Days passed. The human fleet remained in the Helios sector, organizing rescue operations and stabilizing damaged ships. They set up temporary hospitals on several large asteroids. Human and Vrillian medical personnel worked side by side, sharing knowledge and techniques. Commander Hyanwu and Captain Bora watched from the horizon as the massive relief effort unfolded. Hundreds of human ships were involved in rescue operations. Others guarded the perimeter, ensuring no one would interfere with the medical work. I have never seen anything like this, Bora said quietly. An army that fights with such ferocity and then shows such compassion. That is what makes us human, Hyanwu replied. We can be terrible in war, but we choose to be better when war ends. Lieutenant G1 monitored communications and reported that every species in the sector was watching. News of the battle and its aftermath was spreading across the galaxy. 2 weeks after the battle, Anchorage Point Station buzzed with activity unlike anything in its long history. Diplomats from over 40 different species filled its halls. Everyone wanted to witness what would happen next. Would humanity demand tribute from the defeated Vrillians? Would they claim territory? Would they impose harsh terms? Ambassador Nari represented the Terran coalition in the formal negotiations. She was a skilled diplomat who had spent years preparing for first contact scenarios. She sat at a large circular table in the station's main conference room. Across from her sat representatives of the Vrillian Dominion High Council. And beside those representatives sat High Marshal Vexstar. He had recovered from his injuries, though he moved carefully. The burns on his arms had healed, but left faint scars. More importantly, his pride had been broken and then carefully rebuilt into something different, something humbler. The conference room was filled with observers. Diplomats from dozens of species watched from the gallery. Camera drones recorded everything for broadcast across the galaxy. This moment would be studied by historians for centuries. Ambassador Nari stood to address the assembly. She was young for such an important role, but her reputation as a fair negotiator was well known. Representatives of the Vrillian Dominion, she began. We are here today to discuss the relationship between our peoples going forward. The Terran Coalition acknowledges that a military confrontation occurred in the Helios sector. Both sides suffered casualties. Both sides demonstrated their military capabilities. She paused, looking around the room. However, the Terran Coalition does not seek reparations. We do not seek territorial concessions. We do not seek to punish the Vrillian people for the actions of their military. A murmur ran through the observers. This was unprecedented. The victorious power was demanding nothing. What we seek, Nari continued, is what we sought from the beginning: peaceful relations, open trade, mutual cooperation, the opportunity to know each other as neighbors and, perhaps someday, as friends. The senior Vrillian representative stood. His name was Council Elder Krevenuk, and he was over 200 years old. His scales had faded to pale gray with age, but his mind remained sharp. Ambassador Nari, Krevenuk said slowly, I have served the Vrillian Dominion for 170 years. I have witnessed dozens of wars and countless negotiations. Never have I seen a victorious species refuse to take advantage of their position. He paused. Why? What does humanity truly want? Nari smiled slightly. We want what I said, Elder. Peace, nothing more, nothing less. Humanity spent centuries fighting ourselves. Wars that killed billions and nearly destroyed our homeworld. We learned that conquest is empty, that domination breeds only resentment. We would rather have one friend than 100 subjects. Admiral Tai Yang sat in the observers section, watching the proceedings. Next to him was Fleet Admiral Quan Su, who had stayed to represent the military perspective. They listened as Ambassador Nari outlined the proposed treaty. The Terran Coalition proposes the following, Nari said. 1. Immediate establishment of diplomatic relations between our peoples. 2. Creation of trade agreements that benefit both parties equally. 3. Mutual defense pact against external threats. 4. Cultural exchange programs to promote understanding. She looked directly at Vexstar. And 5. The release of all Vrillian military personnel currently in our care. With no conditions and no restrictions, Vexstar stood slowly. The entire room fell silent. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The defeated commander facing his former enemies, Ambassador Nari, Vexstar began, his voice carrying across the chamber, I owe humanity an apology. When Admiral Tai Yang approached with 12 ships, I saw weakness. I saw an opportunity to demonstrate Vrillian superiority. I was arrogant and cruel. He took a breath. What I did not see was that humanity chose to send a small fleet, that they preferred diplomacy over intimidation, that they were offering genuine friendship. I mistook kindness for weakness, and my people paid the price for my mistake. Vexstar turned to face Admiral Tai Yang directly. Admiral, I formally apologize for my conduct. You came in peace, and I met you with mockery. You offered your hand, and I spat on it. You had every right to destroy my fleet entirely, but you chose mercy instead. You have shown me what true strength looks like. Tai Yang stood and walked to the center of the room. He approached Vexstar and extended his hand in the human gesture of peace. High Marshal, your apology is accepted. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them. Vexstar looked at the extended hand for a long moment. Then, carefully, he reached out and grasped it. The room erupted in applause from the observers. Camera drones captured the image. A human admiral and a Vrillian marshal shaking hands over a table. Where peace was being negotiated, Elder Krevenuk spoke again. The Vrillian Dominion High Council has reviewed the proposed treaty. We accept all terms. Furthermore, we wish to make our own contribution to this new relationship. He gestured to Vexstar. High Marshal Vexstar will serve as the Vrillian Dominion's first ambassador to the Terran Coalition. He has learned valuable lessons about humanity. He will ensure that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. Vexstar looked shocked. An ambassadorship was an honor, not a punishment. The High Council was not blaming him for the defeat. They were trusting him to build the peace. Nari smiled. The Terran Coalition accepts Ambassador Vexstar. We believe that those who have experienced conflict directly are often the best advocates for peace. The formal negotiations continued for hours, working through details of trade routes, embassy locations, and cultural exchange programs. But the real work was already done. The foundation had been laid in the weeks that followed. News of the peace treaty spread across the galaxy. The footage of the battle was watched billions of times. The sight of 4,000 human warships appearing from nowhere became legendary. Military analysts studied the tactics. Strategists revised their estimates of human capabilities, but more importantly, the footage of human medics saving Vrillian lives was watched even more. The images of former enemies working together in medical bays. The videos of human and Vrillian doctors sharing knowledge to save patients. Commander Hien-Woo and Captain Bora returned to Earth as heroes. Their small diplomatic fleet had started the chain of events that revealed humanity's true nature to the galaxy. They were honored at ceremonies and asked to speak at military academies. What do you tell young officers about what happened? A reporter asked Hien-Woo during an interview. I tell them that the best weapon is the one you never have to use, Hien-Woo replied. We had 4,000 ships. We could have brought all of them initially and forced the Vrillians to submit through fear. But we chose to try peace first. We chose to give them a chance. That choice defines who we are. Commander Yuna returned to teaching at the Naval Academy. She used the Battle of Helios sector as a case study in her tactics courses, but she focused less on the military aspects and more on the decisions made after the fighting ended. Anyone can destroy an enemy, she would tell her students. That requires only weapons and will. But it takes wisdom to win a battle and then turn your enemy into an ally. That is the harder skill and the more valuable one. Commodore Day 1 continued to command his assault division. But he also began training joint exercises with Vrillian forces, former enemies learning to work together, sharing tactical knowledge, building trust through shared experience. Fleet Admiral Quan Su addressed the entire Terran Coalition military in a broadcast message. 3 months after the battle, today, I want to talk about what we accomplished in the Helios sector. He began. We demonstrated that humanity has the military might to defend itself and its allies. We showed that we will not be intimidated or dismissed, but more importantly, we demonstrated restraint. We showed that having power does not mean we must use it cruelly. He paused, looking directly into the camera. Every species in the galaxy now knows what we are capable of in war, but they also know what we choose to do after war. They know that we value life, even enemy life. They know that we prefer to build rather than destroy. That is the reputation I want humanity to have, not as the strongest fighters, but as the species that fights only when necessary and shows mercy when possible. The message resonated across human space, from Earth to Mars to the furthest colonies. People felt proud of what their military had accomplished, not through conquest, but through strength tempered with wisdom. On Anchorage Point Station, a permanent embassy complex was established. The Terran Coalition and the Vrillian Dominion both maintained offices there. Ambassador Vexstar worked in the Vrillian section, and he worked closely with Ambassador Nari in the human section. They became friends in time. The marshal who had mocked humanity and the diplomat who had extended peace despite that mockery. They would often have lunch together in the station's neutral zone, discussing everything from military history to art to philosophy. Tell me honestly, Vexstar asked Nari one day, did you plan all of this? Sending a small fleet, knowing we would reject it, preparing the Armada to respond? Nari shook her head. No, we genuinely hoped you would accept our first diplomatic mission.